A first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are the Times football reporter Charlotte Dunker and the Guardian reporter Paul McInnes. Welcome along to you both. I'll speak to you shortly. Let's just quickly run you through the back pages as we have them. The Eye run with Liverpool pay the penalty. Yes, Liverpool losing their second Champions League game in the league phase. 1-0 away to Galatasaray. You can see Alexander Isak looking dejected there. And on the right, United for the Amram may jump before sack. Things are very, very bleak at Old Trafford right now, aren't they? Let's go to the back page of the Metro. Arsenal boosts as Saliba shows belief in Gunners by signing a new long-term contract. It's another 5 years for one of the most talented defenders in the Premier League. On the top left there, Eddie defends Nick Fee after idiot dig. Yes, it's Karl-Heinz Rummenigge who has said that he congratulated VfB Stuttgart for getting such a high fee that only an idiot would pay. Eddie Howe has said his comments were irrelevant. Back page of The Sun looks like this. Special 1-0. Jose lost, but he is peacemaker. Yes, Jose Mourinho's return to Stamford Bridge, but with his new Benfica side, ended in a 1-0 defeat for the special one. But he did plead against his fans not to throw missiles at Enzo Fernandez, who used to be at Benfica, of course, now at Chelsea. You can see the other results on the left-hand side. Frank's fighters, the Spurs come back from 2-0 down to draw 2-2 at Bodo Glimt, and Liverpool that defeat in Turkey. And front page of the Telegraph sports section, slots Turkey Twizzler. Istanbul defeat leaves Liverpool manager in a spin. You can see Virgil van Dijk there pictured. And you can see at the top, as you mentioned it before, Jose gets the blues. Benfica lose at Stamford Bridge. Spurs save late on with those 2 goals to come back and draw against Bodo Glimt. And then on the right-hand side there, Reebok humiliating climb down in Israel row. Yes, sport and politics mixing as there's a growing clamour to ban Israel from football competitions and Israeli clubs from football competitions. We'll discuss that one in the second part of our show. OK, welcome once again to you at home and welcome to Charlotte and for the first time to Paul as well. Great to have you with us. So let's start off with Liverpool, shall we? So they had been unbeaten so far in all competitions. Then suddenly 2 defeats in the space of a couple of days, Charlotte. What did you make of, first of all, of the performance away at Galatasaray?
I know, disaster, right? They've lost 2 games in a row. What are we going to do next? I'm sure they're going to be absolutely fine. I mean, going away to Galatasaray, the atmosphere is really intimidating, as anyone who watched that game could hear. They were whistling from the start of the first whistle. It was a bit of a soft penalty, so there are mitigating circumstances. But I think if you look at the bigger picture, that's probably what might concern Slot the most in terms of it's these consistent, maybe defensive frailties that we've seen since the start of the season that caught them out as well. I thought Konate had another poor game as well this evening, and that seems to be a recurring theme for the season. And then he didn't make the decision to start with Salah and Isak on the bench. I can understand why he wants to rotate. I think we saw last season the jeopardy in this competition. Now that it's that massive group stage game, the top 8 go through. So does it matter to them that they lost this game? No. Will they probably still finish in the top 8? Yes. They topped the group stage last season and still didn't go through and win it. So it doesn't necessarily impact them losing today. But I think the injuries as well is going to be a big concern. I think Slot's already said that Alisson is going to miss the game against Chelsea at the weekend, which is a huge blow for them. Ekitike came off, looked like he was holding his hamstring. So I think there are bigger issues around the game than just looking at the result and going, oh no, they've lost 2 consecutive games, because they've got a deep squad. They're obviously a class act. I'm sure they will bounce back. It's not a disaster by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I think the manner of the defeat and the injuries is probably the biggest concern to Slot.
Yeah, I mean, it's normally in the latter stages of this league phase, isn't it, that we get this jeopardy. Will they make top 8 or will they make sort of that next raft of teams that end up being part of the playoff before the last 16. Paul, let's go to your paper, to The Guardian. They go with Slot's hellish night. Liverpool 4-2 defeaters, Alisson forced off. I mean, just riffing on that point that Charlotte made. I mean, yes, they've got a deep squad, but getting these injuries so early on in the campaign, when they are fighting on all fronts, that's not ideal for Arne Slot, is it?
No, not at all. I think that with so much churn over the summer for Liverpool, I think they want to have their players fit and playing so that they can get to know their teammates, so that the coach can get to know them, so they can get to play their own part in the system. But I think beyond that, Liverpool are also trying to work out how to play this season. I think we saw a shift in a shift in selection tonight, a slight shift in formation, but the same issues. The penalty came from, I think it started off with a Liverpool attack and a blind backheel from Florian Wirtz, who still isn't on the same radar as his colleagues. That then leads to a counter attack. Very little counter pressing from Liverpool, which is usually their hallmark, their stock in trade. Then it's up the other end, and it's Yilmaz going one-on-one against Szoboszlai, who is not a fullback, and then he makes a challenge which I think Charlotte's right. It was a narrow one, but it was a penalty, and then they go and they're 1-0 down. Now, up until this point in this season, you'd expect Liverpool to get up ahead of steam and come back again. They didn't do that, but not only that, they didn't really click at all. They didn't look like they understood where their teammates were going to be, where their teammates wanted to go. So I think there's a lot of that working out that Slot needs to do with his team, but now he's doing it on a backdrop of injuries and having to put square pegs in round holes, but also I would say, a degree of growing pressure. This is Liverpool. It may be just 2 defeats, but it's the champions. They didn't lose their second game until their 26th game of the season last year or something crazy like that. They lost those 2 games back to back against PSG and Newcastle, and that became very symbolic about where the team were. So I think Slot will come under pressure quite quickly if things don't start to improve. I don't mean anything about his job or anything, but there will be, scrutiny will come on scrutiny. So he needs to sort this out, but the circumstances aren't that great for doing it at this moment in time.
Yeah, and it was around that time when you mentioned about those defeats. Liverpool, we've been talking about them in terms of the quadruple, and suddenly that just fell away quite quickly, didn't it? What about the response now, Charlotte? How important is it to try and right this immediately? Otherwise, 3 defeats in a row when they take on Chelsea, that then might start to spread a little bit more panic.
Yeah, Saturday's game is massive, isn't it? And it's massive for both of those teams because in the same way that Liverpool are under scrutiny and under a bit of pressure because losing back-to-back games, as Paul said, they only did it once last season. So this isn't a regular thing for them. How is Slot going to get this team to bounce back? He's not going to be used to the pressure either because his first season went so amazingly at Anfield that he was never really under any scrutiny or under any pressure. So you're right in terms of Saturday's game is massive, but it is the same for Chelsea as well because Enzo Maresca's been under a lot of pressure and it's a huge week for them. So both of those teams are going to go into that game at Stamford Bridge with a huge point to prove, especially going into an international break as well, to take that positivity into the break and then come back after that and build on it.
Yeah, for either team, you kind of sense, should they not get the result that they want, that they could be stewing over it for a couple of weeks. And by the way, Alisson is definitely ruled out of that game on Saturday. So we'll presumably see more of Georgi Mamardashvili then in goal for Liverpool. Let's talk about Chelsea, seeing as you mentioned them, Charlotte. 1-0 winners at home to Benfica. And of course, the big story was the return of Jose Mourinho, this time to the away dugout at Chelsea. Paul, in terms of this one, I mean, look at the back of the mirror. That's more like it. Blues get back to winning ways. Former boss Jose suffers a frustrating return. I mean, we all, the British press, the English press, have this real connection with Jose Mourinho. He was turning on the charm in the pre-match news conference. He was trying to build himself as peacemaker here as well with the Enzo Fernandez stuff. But ultimately for Chelsea, with that pressure that was a little bit mounting on Enzo Maresca, that was an important win, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's an important win. I think the Mirror sub-editors are straining a little bit to try and get a Mourinho-related pun into the headline. I'm not sure it was a great performance by Chelsea tonight. It was an own goal that decided an own goal against the run of play, and the Benfica side that Mourinho was able to put out is pretty functional. And not a lot of energy on that field. But yet Chelsea didn't really dominate. Maresca changed his entire front three on the hour, and I don't think that changed the end product either. There was a lot of running into blind alleys or just crosses that couldn't find their men, and then in the last minute you get a third dismissal in 4 games. João Pedro getting sent off for a second yellow card. So which means he'll miss games in the Champions League. So not in the league, but I think it's this sense of maybe slightly stalled momentum there. It was the result, but was it the performance? And some of the issues are still to be resolved. I think the Enzo Fernandez incident is very interesting. It's great to see the gentlemanly side of Jose rather than the more bitter side, let's say. But I think Enzo Fernandez's role in the Chelsea team is kind of crucial. And he's one of these guys who has been in blistering form when he's been able to play a little bit further forward of the pitch. And he's able to do that because Cole Palmer plays outright when he does. And I think that combination is particularly effective for Chelsea. And I think it is because Cole Palmer on the right gives something a little bit unpredictable to this Chelsea team. And I think otherwise, without him coming off the right, stepping into two different areas of the pitch and confusing defenders and finding space, I think everything else about this Chelsea is a bit template. Their attack's the same. Their wingers on both sides seem to do the same jobs. They're quite predictable. And I think that is a blockage for Chelsea that they need to work out. I'm not sure whether that is Maresca's approach or not. I think it's something he managed to get almost by default when they have Palmer. So how great an augur tonight's result is, I'm not entirely sure.
The Sun also lead on Jose Mourinho and Chelsea. Charlotte's special 1-0 is the headline, and that same photo of Jose Mourinho trying to sort of plead with his Benfica fans not to throw missiles at Enzo Fernandez. But I just wonder on Chelsea, and Paul alluded to it there. It's sort of been a bit of a stuttering start. 6 games, 8 points in the league. But this win in the Champions League to follow their opening day defeat in the Champions League. What's your take on them so far this season? And how do they sort of unlock that little bit of momentum?
I think the expectation going into the season was quite high because he obviously managed to finish in the Champions League places, which maybe not many people expected Maresca to do in his first season. They then went and backed that up and won the Club World Cup. So I think people have gone into this season expecting them to carry on with that momentum, and then they've gone into a run of games where they won one in 5 in all competitions. So then the pressure is increasing. People are saying, is Maresca the right man for the job? Some of the fans aren't happy with the way he's playing. I know that when he was at Leicester, there was a lot of fans there that weren't necessarily happy with the style of play and the sort of performances that they were putting in, but they were winning every week and they won the championship by a country mile. So they didn't really care about that because they were picking up points, whereas that's going to be a stick to beat him with if Chelsea don't start picking up points. But I think it's too early in the season to start writing them off. Obviously, off the back of the Club World Cup, no one knew how these players were going to react. They didn't have a proper pre-season. They obviously went all the way through. They've not had much of a break. They've made even more signings. It's about gelling these players. Cole Palmer, they're arguably their best players, out injured. So there's lots of different little pieces, that need to fit together. But there is this pressure on Maresca. Seems to be this mounting pressure on Maresca already that people are saying, is he safe in his job? And what are we, 6 games into the new season? So I think he will be fine. I think things will start to click with Chelsea, but this game against Liverpool on Saturday, especially now that they know they could be without 2 of their key players, is going to be huge for them. Tonight, I think, was about the result rather than the performance. And it was really important for them that they got a result no matter how they got it, which is what they did. So that should give them confidence going into Saturday.
Yes, absolutely. OK, thank you for the moment, Charlotte and Paul. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of these sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Telegraph. And you can see it right at the top there. Spurs saved late on as they come back from 2 goals down to draw at Bodo Glimt in the Arctic Circle. And also on the right-hand side there, United could and may jump before sack. The pressure also mounting on the Portuguese. Back in a couple of minutes. Times football reporter and Guardian reporter Paul McGuinness. OK, let's talk Tottenham, shall we? And Paul, to you and your paper. You can see at the bottom of the page, Spurs strike late for Arctic draw in the Guardian. Frank's side fight back from 2-0 down to earn a point at Bodo Glimt. What was your read on this one? Because for a while, this looked like it would be a miserable night up near the North Pole for Spurs.
Yeah, it is. It's a sort of little capsule of Spurs' season so far, really, in that they struggled to impose themselves on the game, didn't create all that many chances, and went behind in the game. Jens Petter Hauge scored a brace. The second one was an absolute belter, curled it into the top corner with his left foot, and Spurs looked a bit shell-shocked on the plastic pitch. And Bentancur, who just signed a new deal with Spurs, saw a goal disallowed and gave away the opening penalty. So it was a bit of trouble on the pitch, in a very inhospitable place to play. But for the third time in 4 matches, they came back to get something from the game. It was late, and it required a lengthy VAR check to award the final goal, but they went away with a point. And I think when we're talking about how teams are feeling their way into the season, what they're building, what they understand about themselves, and what they've got to improve, I think Thomas Frank will think, well, my team is resolute, and it's got a mentality, and it's got a toughness about them, and that resolve, I think that will be something that the players will understand more about themselves as well. And I think that is a very strong quality to take. Clearly, they're a long way away from playing the sort of football that they were capable of playing sometimes under Ange over the last couple of seasons, but they've got ability to dig in, which would be a question that would always be thrown at a Postecoglou team. So, a long journey for Spurs, like the other teams we've been talking about. But I think there'll be heartening signs to take from tonight's game.
That said, I think the other way of looking at that would be that why are we getting ourselves in these positions in the first place? 2-0 down against Brighton, 1-0 down against Wolves, needing to score late to draw that game, then 2-0 down here. Charlotte, what are the weaknesses you're seeing so far in this Thomas Frank reign at Tottenham?
I think if we're being honest about it's that it's really still new, isn't it? And they're still trying to learn. I think if you go back to the Postecoglou era, there were so many problems with them defensively. They were so wide that they're obviously playing that high line, and they're adjusting to the new tactics, they're adjusting to a new system, they're adjusting to a new manager. And they've actually done it quite well. You're right in terms of they keep going down when they have to keep fighting back, and that resilience is quite impressive that they've shown in the opening few weeks. I think if when he took over, if you said, oh, let's look at up what our targets are up until the October international break, for them to be where they are in the league, having positive results in the Champions League as well, I think they would say that's a fair enough start for him. It's little building blocks, isn't it? And there's plenty for them to improve upon and learn from. But it's been a good, solid start. It's not been perfect, obviously, but it's been a good, solid start for Thomas Frank at Tottenham.
I'll stay with you, Charlotte, to discuss Ruben Amorim. Back page of the Eye, Amorim may jump before sack. Sort of theme to your answers in the show, Charlotte, has been like, it's very early. We don't want to sort of jump the gun here. But admittedly, with Ruben Amorim, it's been a little while now, and things don't seem to be improving. And it now seems that there are murmurings that he doesn't want any more damage to his reputation, should things not improve at Old Trafford. What are you hearing, especially you're on that beat in Manchester?
I think arguably his reputation would be harmed more if he walked away from the job. I think, imagine being the man that walked away from Manchester United. Obviously, we know that all the problems that they've got there, you've even heard like Wayne Rooney saying about all the issues that they've got off the pitch and everything like that. A lot has been a scrutiny on his system. And I think when you listen to him in press conferences, he sometimes finds it hard to grasp because he's saying we win and you don't mention the system being great and we lose and the system is the problem. I think the problem is they're not winning enough games for him to really use that as a justification. So he sometimes looks a bit out of his depth. I don't think sometimes he realised maybe the enormity of the job and the club that he was taking over. But I would be really surprised if he did decide to walk away. this week they've decided to bring Tyrone Malacia back into the squad. He was obviously the one remaining member of that bomb squad that we spoke about in the summer. They managed to get rid of the rest of them. On pre-season tour, Amram did say that they would be integrated. Any of them that didn't leave would be integrated back into the squad. I think everyone, and I was one of those people, sat in that room and thought, yeah, right, of course you would. But that has happened. He's been training with the 21s, and as we've been told, he has been reintegrated back to the first team squad. So it'll be interesting to see how he manages him going forward. Is he going to be another option for him at wing back? So there's plenty of problems for Ruben Amorim to resolve. And I think he's going to probably try and give them his best shot rather than walking away from the job he joined just a little under a year ago.
It always makes, the headlines. We discuss it a lot here on Back Pages tonight. And Paul, on debut, we've got to ask you about United. It is the gift that keeps on giving. But I guess, can you see a situation here, as Charlotte mentioned before, with Chelsea and Liverpool, we're heading into an international break after this next game. United have got Sunderland at home. Sunderland have started very well, probably above their own expectations. Should the pressure build so much, suddenly get some sort of result there, and United lose at home, can you see Amram not being there beyond the international break?
I'll go out on a limb and say, no, I don't see him not being there, i.e. I do see him being there after the international break. Because I agree with Charlotte. I think he's thought about this quite a lot. I think he knows he didn't want to come when they wanted him to come, but I think once he came, he's here for the project. He's trying to make it work. And I think United, the ownership, the Radcliffe ownership, there's been so much tumult over this appointment, which goes back to losing their director of football and caused so many consequences. They spent so many many millions trying to back him, to give him the team to work to the shape he wants. I think they're doubling down on it. I think they're going to stick with it for a lot longer than a number of other teams would do, in the hope that it might work. I think the crazy thing is that this formation, this system, which gets so much attention, it's also the system that's being used by the most effective team in the Premier League right now, which is Oliver Glasner's Crystal Palace. And Palace have clearly, bought players for the squad under different managers, and Glasner has been able to adapt them to his template. But now we look at them and think, these are players who are suited to these positions. Clearly, they've bought players too. So I think it's possible for Amorim to make this work. But when people talk through the issues, which is that lack of athleticism in midfield, the space that's left between the front three and the middle, those things are very apparent every week, and that's got to get fixed. But I think everybody's so heavily invested in this at this point, they're going to double down rather than walk away.
Just one other story just to mention, and just really to mark it, and which is in the Daily Telegraph sports section, Reebok in humiliating climb down in Israel row. One of the sort of growing ecosystem of stories, really, given the situation with the growing clamour both within UEFA and amongst sort of European football family to try and ban not just Israel but Israeli clubs in European competition, and that is sort of on hold now. There was meant to be a vote on this, but UEFA are pausing that, given the situation, the very, very delicate situation with Israel and Gaza, and especially with the role of President Trump and his 20-point plan, that there may be peace ahead potentially in the region. Sadly, not enough time to discuss that, but thank you very much indeed for your company, Charlotte. And on debut, Paul McInnes, you're welcome to come back anytime. Thank you very much indeed. If you missed any of the show, another chance to see Back Pages hour. Also available as a podcast. Download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. It's Shaban and Riyadh with us tomorrow. And don't forget, we'll be reacting to all the night's football as Liverpool lose in Turkey. Back-to-back defeats for Arne Slot.